All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive into cybersecurity. You know the drill by now. We've got our usual stack of news articles, the hacker news, dark reading, you know the ones.
And of course, we've got that great interview lined up later with a real expert.
Oh, right. Don Mangiarelli, the cybersecurity pro from Cybersecurity Hawaii. That's going to be good. And even a compliance checklist. So whether you need this for a meeting or just can't get enough cybersecurity, goodness, we got you.
It really is a wild world out there right now. New threats popping up every day. Got to stay on top of it.
Okay, so first things first. Apple patched some zero-day vulnerabilities. We all hear that term, but what does that actually mean, for regular people?
Yeah, so 0 day, it means hackers are already using it, and Apple doesn't even know about it yet, so no patch, no fix until they find it. And these ones were bad. Attackers could have gotten full control of your device.
So bottom line, if you've got an Apple device, update it like right now.
Absolutely don't wait.
Okay, on to something a bit more positive. Remember Scattered Spider? That hacking group hitting LastPass and Okta?
Oh yeah, those guys. Big news. 5 of them, well, alleged members at least, just got arrested. That's a huge win.
So what does this tell us, about cybercrime as a whole?
Well, these guys, they were organized, not just some lone wolf in a basement. This was a full-on operation. Well-funded, targeting big companies after credentials, financial data, the works.
Makes you think twice about just relying on a strong password, huh?
Exactly. You need multiple layers, technical stuff like that multi-factor authentication we always talk about. But also, people need to know how to spot those scams, social engineering and all that.
Security awareness training, we talk about that a lot too. All right, well, shifting gears a bit, we've got Salt Typhoon making waves. They're targeting telecom companies. Even T-Mobile got hit. And this group, suspected to be state-sponsored, right?
Right, out of China, most likely. It's a worrying trend, nation-state actors going after critical infrastructure. Telecom, it's the backbone of everything these days, Business, government, everything.
It's not just about stealing data anymore. It's about disrupting, well, everything.
Yeah, imagine taking down entire networks. And with state-sponsored groups, it's a whole other level of resources and motivation.
So what makes telecom such a juicy target?
Oh, they've got it all. Customer data, call records, network maps, you name it. That's valuable for espionage, sabotage, or even to launch more attacks.
It's like a one-stop shop for cyber mayhem.
Pretty much.
Cybersecurity, it's not just a tech issue anymore, huh?
Nope. National security front and center.
Okay, let's step back from the brink of cyber apocalypse for a second. Something a little closer to home, Note Sealer malware is targeting Facebook ad managers. What's the deal with that one?
So, this malware, it steals your login, basically gives the attacker your whole Facebook ad account. They can run their own campaigns, spread misinformation, scams, anything, and you get stuck with the bill.
So how do they actually get your login, though?
Phishing emails, mostly. Or malicious links. They might pretend to be Facebook, with some security alert.
Oh, I've seen those.
You click the link, enter your info, and boom, they've got you.
Sneaky. So what can we do to avoid falling for this?
Number 1, always be suspicious. If an email or link seems even a little off, don't click it.
Even if it looks like it's from someone you know?
Especially then.
Okay, good advice. And of course, we got to mention multi-factor authentication again.
Oh, absolutely. Adds that extra layer of security, makes it way harder for them to get in, even with your password.
For anyone who's not sure what that is, how does it work?
Simple. You log in, but then they ask for something else. A code, they text you, your fingerprint, something like that.
So even if they get your password, they're still locked out.
Exactly. Can't get in without that second piece of the puzzle.
Makes sense. All right, well, that's a crash course in password security, I guess. Now, let's talk about ransomware. We saw this article. It was talking about 5 things businesses often mess up, things that can make them more vulnerable to ransomware attacks. What jumped out at you?
Preparation, or lack of it, really. Companies have these plans, business continuity, disaster recovery, all that. But they don't test them, or they forget to update them as things change.
So it's like having an escape route, but never actually checking if it's blocked or something.
Yeah, and one of the biggest mistakes, not testing backups. Imagine you get hit, pay the ransom, which you should never do, by the way, but then your backups don't even work.
Oh, that's just adding insult to injury.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then incident response plans. When an attack happens, you need to know exactly what to do, who's in charge, how do you communicate, how do you contain the damage. Without that, it's chaos. And you make bad decisions.
You need a clear head when things go wrong.
Exactly.
So it's all about businesses, or do regular people need to worry about this too?
Oh, everyone should be thinking about this. What if ransomware hit your computer, your phone? got backups, know how to restore everything.
Good point.
It's becoming more and more common, attackers going after individuals. They often have weaker security than big companies.
So what's the main thing you want people to remember about ransomware?
Be proactive. Back up your data. Make sure those backups are safe. Test them. And have a plan, just in case.
Good advice. Okay, before we move on, business email compromise scams, those are still a thing, right?
Oh yeah, big time. And they're getting harder and harder to spot.
So how do they work for people who might not know?
Basically, they pretend to be someone you trust, like a coworker, a vendor, even your boss, and they trick you into sending money or giving them sensitive info.
I feel like I've seen emails like that.
Yeah, they can fake email addresses really well now. They might even hack into someone's actual account or create a whole fake account that looks almost identical to the real one.
So just checking the sender's email address, that's not enough anymore.
Not always. They can make those fake emails look super convincing. They use the right language, the right branding. They might even research you beforehand.
Wow, so how can we actually protect ourselves from this?
Stay alert. That's the biggest thing. If someone's asking for money or information, even if it seems like someone you know, double check. Call them directly. Use a phone number you know is theirs, not the one in the email.
Don't be afraid to be a little paranoid, basically.
That's okay.
All right, well, that's a good reminder. Now, for a deep dive within our deep dive, we're going to hear from Don Mangiarelli. He's a cybersecurity expert from Cybersecurity Hawaii. He's got a lot to say about securing Microsoft 365 environments.
Yeah, that's important stuff. So many businesses and individuals rely on Microsoft 365 now. Email, files, collaboration, everything, it's all there. And that makes it a prime target, of course.
Right, so what did Mangiarelli have to say about the biggest risks?
Well, he pointed out that misconfigurations and misconceptions are a huge problem. People think Microsoft 365 is secure out of the box, but you really need to set it up properly. Configure it for your specific needs.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Not at all. Security is an ongoing process. You got to stay on top of it.
So what are some of those essential security features that Mangiarelli recommends?
Well, he talked about multi-factor authentication, which we've already covered, but also conditional access, Entra ID, and Defender security.
Okay, I'm going to need you to break those down for me.
Sure, let's start with conditional access. Imagine you can set rules about who can access what and from where. Like you can say only let people log in from devices we trust. Or if someone's trying to access sensitive files from a new location, make them go through extra checks.
Okay, so you're basically creating like a custom security perimeter, right?
Exactly. It's dynamic, responsive to different situations. Like if someone tries to log in from a weird device, conditional access can block them. Or make them verify their identity with multi-factor authentication.
So you're not just blocking everyone all the time.
Right. It's intelligent access control.
Okay, I like it. Now, Entra ID, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, it's basically the control panel for who gets access to what in Microsoft 365. It manages users, groups, permissions, the whole shebang.
So you don't have to manage each app and service separately.
Whoop, all in one place. Makes it much easier to keep everything consistent and secure.
Okay, starting to make sense.
Yeah.
And what about Defender security? What's that all about?
That's your heavy hitter. Like having a whole security team constantly watching your systems.
Sounds intense.
It is, but in a good way. It protects you from all sorts of threats, viruses, malware, phishing, even ransomware.
More than just an antivirus.
Well, yeah, it's a whole suite of tools. Real-time threat detection, behavioral monitoring, automatic remediation.
It's like a cybersecurity bodyguard.
Pretty much.
All right, well, with all these features, I'm feeling a lot safer already. But can regular people actually set all this up?
Well, Microsoft has made things easier, but it can still be complicated. It's like you don't have to be a mechanic to drive, but it helps to know how to change a tire.
So when should we call in the professionals?
If you're feeling overwhelmed, or if you're dealing with really sensitive data, find an IT expert who specializes in Microsoft 365 security. They can assess your needs, set everything up properly, make sure you're protected.
Like a personal trainer for your cybersecurity.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, Mangiarelli also talked about user access and permission management. What did he have to say about that?
Well, he stressed how complex it can get. Especially for bigger organizations, it's really important to get it right. Because if you mess up, you could accidentally create security holes.
So you're saying it's better to leave that to the experts?
Yeah, for most people, it's probably a good idea.
Makes sense. What about email security specifically? Any tips there?
Oh, lots of things to consider. You need to secure logins, encrypt the data in your inbox, set up encryption for sending and receiving. It's not just about avoiding dodgy links anymore.
It's about making sure the whole system is locked down tight.
Exactly.
Did Mangiarelli talk about preventing data loss and business continuity?
He did. He emphasized backups, of course. Encrypted backups, stored with a separate provider, that's key.
Backups are like your safety net, right?
Exactly. But he also talked about encrypting data at rest. That means the data sitting on your devices and servers. So even if someone steals your hard drive, they can't read the data without the key.
Like a digital safe.
Exactly. And his big point, backups are useless if you can't restore them. Gotta test those restores regularly, like a fire drill for your data.
Okay, I like that analogy. So with all this in mind, what are some key things people should be thinking about?
It's about connecting the dots. All these individual threats, all these best practices, how do they fit into the bigger picture of your security? Are you taking a proactive approach? Are you prepared for the unexpected? Are you using the right tools?
Those are good questions. Now, before we wrap up this section, we found a resource specifically for healthcare folks. It's a HIPAA compliance checklist.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Covers all the key areas: risk analysis, policies and procedures, training, incident response. It's a roadmap for HIPAA compliance, basically.
Super helpful for anyone in healthcare. All right, well, we've covered a lot of ground today. It can feel a little overwhelming, but remember, knowledge is power. We've talked about practical steps you can take to protect yourself and your business.
Simple things like multi-factor authentication, backing up your data, even just talking to an expert.
And that's where Mangiarelli's insights on Microsoft 365 security are really valuable. It's not just for big companies. This stuff applies to everyone who uses Microsoft 365.
And that's a lot of people these days.
Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into those Microsoft 365 essentials. Mangiarelli mentioned multi-factor authentication, conditional access, Entra ID, and Defender security. We've touched on them, but let's break them down a bit more.
Sure, let's start with multi-factor authentication.
Okay, sounds good. We'll pick up right there in part 2 of this deep dive. See you soon.
Okay, so multi-factor authentication, or MFA, it's like that extra lock on your door. Even if someone gets your key, they still can't get in.
Right, the extra layer of protection, we talked about that. But how does it actually work, in real life?
It's pretty simple, really. You turn it on, and then when you try to log in, they ask for something else besides your password, like a code they send to your phone, or you have to approve the login on your phone. Sometimes they even use biometrics, like your fingerprint.
So it's checking if it's really you, not just someone with your password.
Exactly. And even if someone steals your password, they're still stuck. They need that second factor, that second piece of the puzzle.
Okay, that makes sense. So MFA sounds like a good idea for everyone, but what about those other features Mangiarelli mentioned? Conditional access, Entra ID, Defender security, those sound more complicated.
They are a bit more involved, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all about building up those layers of protection, making sure the right people have access and no one else. Let's start with conditional access. Imagine you can set rules about who can access what and from where.
Okay, so like you could say, only let people log in from our office computers.
Exactly. Or you could say, if someone's trying to access sensitive files from a new location, make them go through extra verification.
So it's like a smart security system. It adapts to different situations.
Yeah, it's dynamic. It responds to the context. Like if someone tries to log in from a device you've never seen before, conditional access can flag that as suspicious.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so conditional access, that's about controlling access based on different factors. Now, what about Entra ID? What was that all about again?
Right. So Entra ID, it's Microsoft's identity and access management system. It's basically the control panel for everything in your Microsoft 365 world.
It manages all the users, the permissions, all that stuff.
Yep, all in one place.
So you don't have to manage each individual app separately?
Exactly. It's much easier to keep track of everything and make sure it's all secure.
Okay, starting to get the hang of it. Now, last one, Defender security. What's that one do?
Oh, that's a big one. Defender is like having a whole team of security professionals watching over your shoulder.
Okay, that sounds reassuring, but also a little creepy.
Well, it's not literally people watching you. It's a suite of security tools that protect you from all sorts of threats.
So it's more than just an antivirus program.
Oh, way more. It's got antivirus, anti-malware, intrusion detection, all that good stuff.
Okay, so it's like a whole security system rolled into one.
Exactly. And it's constantly learning and adapting to new threats. So you're protected even from the latest and greatest attacks.
That's good to know. All right, so with all these features, it seems like Microsoft 365 is pretty secure. But can regular people actually set all this up themselves?
It depends. Microsoft has made things easier, but it can still be a bit complicated.
I can imagine.
It's like, you don't have to be a mechanic to drive a car, but it helps to know a little bit about how it works.
So when would you say it's time to call in a professional?
If you're feeling lost, or if you're dealing with sensitive data that you really can't afford to lose, find someone who specializes in Microsoft 365 security. They can help you get everything set up right.
Okay, makes sense. Now, Mangiarelli also talked about user access and permission management.
Right. He emphasized how important that is, especially for bigger organizations. But it can get really complex really fast.
So it's one of those things that's better left to the experts.
Yeah, for most people, I would say so.
Okay, good to know. Now, what about email security specifically? Any tips there?
Oh, tons of things to think about. You need to secure logins, encrypt the data in your inbox, set up encryption for sending and receiving. It's a whole multi-layered approach.
So it's not just about being careful what you click on anymore.
Right. It's about making sure the whole system is secure from top to bottom.
Okay, that makes sense. Did Mangiarelli talk about preventing data loss and ensuring business continuity?
Yeah, he talked about the importance of backups, of course. Encrypted backups, stored separately from your main system.
Right. Backups are your safety net.
Exactly. But he also talked about encrypting data at rest. That means the data that's just sitting on your devices and servers, even when you're not using it.
So even if someone steals your computer, they can't access the data.
Right. They need the encryption key to unlock it.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And his big point, backups are useless if you can't actually restore them. You got to test those restores regularly, make sure they're working.
Like a fire drill for your data.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So we've talked about a lot of technical stuff, but what's the main takeaway for people?
I think it's about connecting the dots. We've talked about all these individual threats, all these best practices, but how does it all fit together? Are you taking a proactive approach to your security? Are you prepared for the unexpected? Are you using the right tools?
Those are good questions to ask yourself. Now, before we wrap up this part, we wanted to mention that HIPAA compliance checklist again.
Oh, yeah, that's a great resource for anyone working in healthcare. It covers all the key areas of HIPAA compliance, helps you make sure you're doing everything right.
Okay, so if you're in healthcare, definitely check that out. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today, but remember, knowledge is power. We've talked about practical steps you can take to protect yourself and your business.
Simple things like multi-factor authentication, backing up your data, even just talking to an expert.
And that's where Mangiarelli's insights on Microsoft 365 security are so valuable. It's not just for big corporations. This stuff applies to everyone.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get back to those Microsoft 365 essentials. We've touched on them, but let's break them down a bit more.
Okay, sounds good.
Multi-factor authentication, conditional access, Entra ID, Defender security.
Let's do it. So we're back, ready to wrap up our cybersecurity deep dive.
That's right. We've gone from 0 days to ransomware, phishing, to Microsoft 365, the whole works.
We even had that great interview with Don Mangiarelli. He really knows his stuff.
He did a lot of good advice in there. So let's recap a bit. We talked about being proactive, right? Multi-factor authentication, backups, staying informed. But I think something we haven't stressed enough is, well, the human element.
Oh, absolutely. Technology can only do so much. At the end of the day, it's people making decisions. And people make mistakes.
Right. We click on bad links, we fall for scams, we use weak passwords, all that.
And even with the best security tools, that human factor can still trip you up.
So what can we do about that, besides just telling people to be more careful?
Security awareness training, that's key. It's not just about scaring people, it's about educating them, help them understand the risks, the tactics attackers use, how to spot the red flags.
So it's like giving them the tools to make better decisions, not just telling them what to do.
Exactly. You want to empower people, make them active participants in their own security.
And it's got to be ongoing, right? Because the threats are always changing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's not a one-time thing. You got to keep refreshing, keep learning.
Like a cybersecurity gym membership. Got to keep working those muscles.
Aha. I like that. Now, before we wrap up completely, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier. Finding the right expert help.
Right, because not everyone can be a cybersecurity whiz.
Exactly, and that's fine. There are people who specialize in this. They can help you with the technical stuff, the strategy, everything.
Whether it's setting up Microsoft 365, creating a training program, or dealing with an actual incident.
Exactly. Find someone you trust who knows what they're doing.
Like finding a good mechanic. You don't need to rebuild the engine yourself.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the most important thing to remember is Cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination.
There's no finish line. You're never really done.
Right. It's about constantly adapting, staying ahead of the curve.
Being proactive, being informed, making smart choices.
Exactly.
And we're all in this together, right? The more we share, the more we learn, the better off we all are.
Yep.
All right, so that's it for this deep dive into cybersecurity. We hope you found it helpful, and remember you can find all the articles and resources we mentioned in the show notes.
And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you next time.